Hi, I'm Rob King. This is Homebrew number 33 and we're off for a St Patrick's Day themed episode with an Irish Stout. This is the Homebrew Masterplan with 15 homebrews aligned to 15 special events throughout the year. Now it's only month 3 and I fear I may be behind schedule for May and for June, but at least it's so far so good. In January we did the double IPA, that was a pretty good success, and in February we had the Valentine's Strawberry Chocolate Mead. Well, that did present a few problems and didn't quite make the grade. But for March we're back to a beer style for which I've enjoyed some success in the past, so I'm hoping my luck holds this time around. This recipe will give us 10 litres into the fermenter and should give us something like 8 litres into the bottle. Now the grain bill is over 2 kilograms, starting with 1.44 kilograms of Golden Promise, 307 grams of flaked torrefied barley, 162 grams of low colour chocolate malt and 145 grams of that roast barley. Yeast is the Fermentis Safe Ale English Ale SO4, 5.5 grams of that. Hops then are East Kent Goldings going in as the bittering hop, and then slightly more for aroma we have good old Fuggle going in at 20 minutes and 10 minutes. We're going to need 14.5 litres of bottled water. Now I'm a big fan of the Ashbeck water because it has a low mineral content. That low mineral content makes it easy for us to add the water chemicals we need to achieve the profile for the particular beer that we're looking for. In addition to the 10 litre fermenter, the equipment that we're going to need includes a scales to measure out those grains, our 16 litre mulled wine warmer that we're using as a boiling kettle and mash tun, a hydrometer and measuring cylinder, a thermometer, a pH meter to monitor the pH if you've got one available, a jeweler's scales to measure those fine measurements for water chemicals, and of course some bottles. Not included in this list is an airlock and bung because that's built into our fermenter. Before we begin, make sure everything is sanitised. To get started on this one, first of all we need to heat up 14.5 litres of bottled water to a strike temperature of 68 degrees centigrade. Now this time around I've used a different supplier for the grains, which means I've got to go a bit old school and measure them all out myself. Darn. That water's heating up, so it's time to prepare the water chemicals. Now the water profile we're aiming for is your Dublin water. It's great for stouts and porters, and what we're going to need are 0.2 grams of baking soda, 0.2 grams of calcium chloride, 3.3 grams of chalk, that's calcium carbonate, 0.2 grams of Epsom salts, 1 gram of gypsum, and we may or may not need some lactic acid. We'll keep that on hand just in case we need to bring the pH down. This is a brew in the bag recipe. Once we reach the strike temperature of 68 degrees, we can just nudge the temperature down a bit. The mash temperature is going to be 66 degrees for this one. And we can add the grains. Once we've mixed the grains in there, we want to mix thoroughly. We want to prevent clumping to make sure we maximise the amount of sugars that we can get out of the mash. Once that's all mixed in, we can seal up the bag. The mash is for 60 minutes at 68 degrees centigrade. We have reached 15 minutes and it's time to take a sample to test that pH level. On this occasion it's perfect at 5.4, so we don't need any lactic acid on this occasion to bring that pH down any further. Our 60 minutes are up and it is time to raise the temperature and remove that brew in the bag from the wort. We can let that drain for a little while. It turns out the pre-boil gravity reading was a little bit low. It was 1.030 versus a target of 1.035. So I thought it would be a good idea to try and cycle some of the wort through the grains and therefore raise the overall gravity reading. However, that was not a good idea. I ended up with the wort everywhere and not really cycling through the grains. Don't try this at home, folks. Clean up on aisle 3. Having cleaned up my previous mess, it was just time to let the grains drain. The boil is 60 minutes long, and our first hop addition is going to be 13 grams of East Kent Goldings.
These are the Fuggles hops for the 20 and 10 minute additions.
20 minutes and it's 14 grams of Fuggles. 10 minutes and it's a further 14 grams of Fuggles.
I'm going to finish off this Irish moss. It's over a year old. I've got some fresh. So all 16 grams are going to go in.
Furthermore, we add the Irish moss and 5 grams of yeast nutrient. At this point we add the chiller and also turn on the pump to allow both items to sterilise in the boiling wort. Our pre-boil sample has reached room temperature, so it's time to take some measurements. The specific gravity is almost spot on. We are at 1035 versus a target of 1036. That's great. Onto the pH reading then, and we come in at 5.6. This is a little high, it's outside of our range, so we are going to add some lactic acid to increase the acidity, reduce the pH effectively. We'll add 4 millilitres of lactic acid. We have reached the end of the boil, so it's time for a hop stand. So we just need to cool it a very little, down to 80 degrees, where we will hold it for 10 minutes.
10-minute hop stand is up. That held its temperature pretty well. We're into cooling.
We have reached 22 degrees, so the cooling can come out. We'll just take the chiller away and let the whirlpool run for a little longer. We'll then stop the whirlpool and wait for 5 or 10 minutes for that to settle out before we transfer.
Both these are off. Pump is off. Turn that one back on.
Transfer all went smoothly, splashing the wort to be able to aerate it. I'm just removing the hot bags, and now it's time for my least favourite thing, cleaning. Despite our concerns, the original gravity came out at 1.044 versus a target of 1.041, so it's actually just a little high.
Final 2 ingredients. 5 grams of Safe Ale SO4. And 5 grams of yeast nutrient. A very strange airlock, but it works fine.
Since the lactic acid was a late addition, it's worth us doing a pH test as well. Wouldn't normally do that at this stage, but let's just check it out. It was 5.21, which is right at the low end of the scale, but was at least within range. Day 1, and we have just some slow activity building up. Day 2, and it really has slowed down already. Day 3, and just a very occasional bubble, but you really have to wait around for it. It is day 14, and it is time for bottling. The first step, of course, though, is making sure everything is clean and sanitized. Colour is exactly where you'd have expected it to be, which is good. Interestingly, bit of evaporation there from the top. I probably should have kept an eye on that and topped it up. You can see where the Krausen was at the sides, but that seems to have receded a bit. Down here, the trub seems to be pretty solid. It seems to have dropped out nicely. I will save you some of the pain of the next 15 minutes as I couldn't get the lid off the fermenter. I'll save that one for the outtakes, but oh my goodness, I could not move that lid.
Several hours later.
It's time for transfer, and I am a fan of transferring into a bottling bucket for a number of reasons. First of all, it gives me 2 chances to remove any trub and maximise the clarity of the beer. Secondly, we can mix the sugar in evenly through the whole wort, therefore there's no chance of one bottle having more sugar than another. Also, my bottling bucket is pretty handy because it uses gravity to be able to do the bottling, as we'll see in a moment. There were 7 litres in the bucket, and taking a reading, we hit a final gravity of 1.012 versus a target of 1.010. That's pretty good. So the ABV came out at 4.2% versus a target of 4.1%. I'm pretty happy with that. The downside of using a bottling bucket, of course, is the risk of oxidization caused by exposing the wort to air. To mitigate that a little bit, I give it a blast of CO2 over across the top, just to try and create a layer temporarily to protect it from any air. To bottle carbonate, we need to add some sugar. This effectively restarts fermentation in the bottle, forces the CO2 into the wort itself, and effectively we end up with a nice carbonated beer at the end. Now, how much priming sugar you put in depends on how much carbonation you want, and it can range from just 2 grams per litre up to probably a maximum of 9 grams per litre. Now on this occasion, I am actually using that maximum amount. We want a good level of carbonation, so we're going for 9 grams per litre. That is 63 grams in total. Having mixed it all in, I'm taking the relaxing position and bottling from my chair. We have 12 bottles of Irish Stout that I'm going to put away at room temperature for a couple of weeks, and we can give them a try. Now, the bottling bucket wasn't perfect, there was a bit of a cleanup afterwards, but still it was really simple. Next time I'm just going to put a cloth down underneath. There was some trub left in the bottom of the bottling bucket. It's a great example of why I do the 2-stage process. However, I do accept there is a bit of a risk for oxidization. The trub from this beer and yeast was pretty solid there at the bottom of the demijohn. Plenty of cleaning up to do, but it does help when it's this dense in preventing it coming through into the bucket or into the bottles. Bottling day is over then. We've just got to wait now for St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick's Day is here, and it is time to open the first of the bottles of Irish Stout. Oh, well, that has come out as good as I could have hoped. Thanks, Martin. Great recipe. It's time for the evaluation. St. Patrick's Day came and went, and I rather enjoyed the stout too much to do a proper evaluation. So here we are a few days later to have another bottle. Can't be bad.
It's been in the fridge, so it's lovely and cold. First, let's have a look at the colour. Nice deep black, that's very nice. Lovely head, tan head there. Doesn't hold the head for very long, but actually a lovely head. Aroma. Well, I have sunk a few of these already, and the aroma is that very lovely malty stout aroma. Right on target, really, I think, in terms of a typical stout. A short sip, to be fair, just very delicious, very refreshing. No real bitterness like you get from an IPA. Just a really good mouthfeel and flavour. Longer sip. Well, that was obviously much more than a sip, but it goes down really sweet. It has a very fullness of flavour. You can really taste that sweetness and feel that sweetness on your throat as it goes down. Very, very, very drinkable. I am a fan of an Irish Stout. I brewed a Russian Imperial Stout for my birthday last year, and that came out very well indeed. But actually, I think this one does go one step better in terms of just sheer quaffability. Thank you everybody, please do like and subscribe and keep watching. Cheers.
That's 3 down and 12 to go. The Homebrew Masterplan scored a winner with the Irish Stout. Next time, it's an Easter special, a cranberry apple cider. It's already in the bottle and looking fabulous. I just can't wait.